Hi, Facebook friends! Welcome to lesson 2 of the 5-part series on the best ADHD diet to calm your child down and focus so you can spend more quality time with your child instead of doing the screaming and yelling battles. My name is Anatai. I'm a registered dietitian and a board-certified specialist in pediatric nutrition with a focus in functional medicine. And I help kids with ADHD achieve their full potential naturally without medication. So yesterday we talked about how the ADHD brain is different. So it's on average 3 years behind and 10% smaller than the neurotypical brain, and it does not like carbs. So today we're going to continue to talk about the other ADHD brain. So let's get started. So even though the conventional ADHD treatment often focuses on the treating what's happening in the brain, but most of the more aggressive and explosive seen in children with ADHD seems to stem from the gut. In recent years, scientists actually discovered the connection between the gut bacteria and many psychiatric and neurodevelopmental disorders such as autism spectrum disorders, ADHD, depression, anorexia nervosa, and Rett syndrome. They found that the brain chemical imbalances seen in a lot of people with ADHD might actually start in the gut, causing some of the more aggressive, explosive type of symptoms. What scientists learned was that the gut is actually talking to the big brain, like the one up here, also known as the central nervous system that includes the brain and the spinal cord. They actually talk to each other continuously through the hormonal, immune, and nervous systems. And the gut bacteria doesn't live in our intestine for free. They do pay rent in the form of precursors and ingredients that the big brain can use to make brain chemicals such as dopamine, noradrenaline, and serotonin, which help to calm the ADHD brain. So based on what the scientists know so far about the gut and the brain connections, they actually conclude that our intestine is possibly our second brain. So does your child with ADHD suffer from stomach pain, bedwetting, fecal incontinence, diarrhea, constipation? And does your child also have food allergy, food intolerances, asthma, ear infection, and unexplained skin rashes? Or does your child crave things like milk, cheese, sugar, bread, pasta, noodles, crackers, and any kind of carbs? Chances are all these symptoms are all related and can all be traced back to the gut imbalance. Digestion issues such as constipation, diarrhea, bedwetting, fecal incontinence are very common among children with ADHD. There's a study of more than 700,000 children. They found that kids who have ADHD are 3 times more likely to have chronic constipation and 6 times more likely to have fecal incontinence than kids who doesn't have ADHD. And also, recurrent and frequent antibiotic use for ear infection also destroy good bacteria in the gut. And this can cause yeast and bacterial overgrowth, which can cause some of the symptoms like hyperactivity, anger, irritability, mood swings, poor memory, poor attention span, sleep problem, and other inappropriate behaviors. Candida or yeast overgrowth and bacterial overgrowth might be the cause of the GI symptoms in your child with ADHD. So the intestine do need a combination of both the good and the bad bacteria to do its job properly. When the intestine bacteria balance is disrupted and out of balance, mental and physical health issues such as anxiety, depression, and even cancer can happen. So does your child have frequent ear infection needing antibiotics, or does your child also crave sugar? So Candida is a type of fungus or yeast that lives in our body, inside the mouth and also in the intestine in small little groups. Surprisingly, with all the bad reputation, yeast and Candida actually do a few benefits for our body. But when the good bacteria are wiped out by antibiotics or not being fed well with a high fiber diet, or there's too much sugar feeds the yeast, then the yeast can take over the intestine. Because the yeast or Candida is actually an opportunistic organism, which means that when the opportunity comes up, it's gonna thrive. So usually it's a high sugar diet. So they can become a problem when there are too many of them, because the Candida or yeast make toxins or things that are poisonous to the body, and this toxin can actually cross the intestine, gets into the body, into the brain, and it can actually block the prefrontal cortex, which we learned yesterday that is a little bit smaller and behind in kids with ADHD. So this can result in hyperactivity, anger, anxiety, moodiness, poor memory, poor attention span, problems, and other inappropriate behaviors. Also, yeast and Candida can be triggered by a high sugar diet or high sugar, low fiber diet, poor immunity, use of drugs like antibiotics, birth control pills, estrogen, steroids, and other psychiatric or psychological stress can cause that. And children are particularly vulnerable to these kind of insults because of the kind of immature immune system. Some telltale signs of a Candida overgrowth or yeast overgrowth are addictive behavior towards sugar and sweets. Like you probably heard of people like, I'll kill for cookies. Like you'll still see like behaviors kind of like an addict, like I really, really, really want that. And then they'll calm down after they have that sugar or the cookies. Bacterial overgrowth. Does your child have persistent diarrhea that doesn't go away? Have your child been on antibiotics or stomach suppressing medications like, what are they? The Prilosec, Prevacid, Zantac, any of those? So your child's aggressive behavior may be the result of something called Clostridium difficile infection. There are some studies that show that this deadly or potentially deadly diarrhea bug is kind of spreading in the community among children. It used to be an infection that is common in the nursing home in older people, but they're seeing more of this infection in children. So what they found is 76% of new cases in children are in kids who have been on antibiotics. 20% of these kids are on stomach suppressing medication. And it kind of comes no surprise because one of the function of stomach acid is to kill any bacteria that comes in our food, because whatever we try our best to clean our food as much as possible, there's still gonna be some bacteria in it, and that's the reason why we need stomach acid, is to kill the bacteria in the food that we eat. So when people, not just children, go on medication that suppress stomach acid, that means that we take one of the defense down. So the stomach is open for all. Any bacteria that comes in is going to pass through safely. So that's one reason. And then obviously we talk about antibiotics, how it kills the good bacteria and create an imbalance. So what happened is with the C. difficile infection, or we call it C. diff, the waste product from this bacteria actually can block the conversion of dopamine to other neurotransmitters in the brain. So what happened is you actually have too much dopamine. So remember from yesterday's lesson, we talked about how the ADHD brain is kind of short on dopamine. So with this infection, your brain actually have too much dopamine. So you see how when you have too much of a good thing, it can be a problem too. So the other issue with this is when your body is not converting the dopamine to norepinephrine or the epinephrine, this can actually affect the other brain chemicals. And in the long term, it can actually cause permanent damage to the brain, the adrenal glands, and the sympathetic nervous system. So if your child have aggressive behaviors that actually become worse when starting ADHD medication, especially the one that boosts dopamine, chances are he or she most likely might have a C. diff infection, which actually you can actually get a stool test to check for that. So in lesson 5, we're going to talk about simple strategies to correct these kind of gut imbalances and bacterial overgrowth. And that's it for the ADHD gut. So basically it's leaky because of bacterial and yeast overgrowth and bacterial infection. And in the next lesson, we'll talk about hidden food allergies in children with ADHD. So I hope you find today's information helpful. Let me know what you think and comment below. Remember, ADHD doesn't doom your child to a life of underachievement. You know your child is bright, full of potential, and deserves the best. In fact, many of the world's greatest discoveries and inventions are made by people with ADHD. I helped my crazy wild child who couldn't read or write when she was little with the 4 steps I laid out in the Eat to Focus book. She's now a merit scholarship student majoring in pre-med in Loyola Chicago University. So stay strong and keep believing in your child. Also, check out the Eat to Focus book at Amazon.com to learn more about my story and the 4 steps that I used to transform my daughter and help her reach her full potential. This information can change your child's future too. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Okay, bye.